If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? Welcome back to the conversation. CEO Mischief Makers, MKJ here, and my amazing friend and guest today, Jim Fuhs. Hello there, Jim. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, MK.
All right. So if you have not listened to our mindset episode, Monday's episode, I encourage you to do so because I raised a couple of controversial topics. Let's just say it that way. And you might want to orient yourself to what we're going to talk about here because we're going to go a little bit further. Probably not too controversial, but for some people it might be. But this episode is about impact and innovation. And if you've listened to this show before, you know what my definition of innovation is. If you haven't, let me give it to you really quick. It's not the Elon Musks and the Steve Jobs of the world innovating products. It's all of us bringing our previous experience, intuition, knowledge, the way we look at the world, the way we look at ourselves, into innovating the space in which we work. And it is a true thing. There's actually a word that I found that kind of identifies this, and it's called tacit knowledge, T-A-C-I-T, tacit knowledge. It's a different knowledge. It's not direct knowledge. There's like 3 different knowledge ideas, but this is one that is actually, I think, more valuable than anything you could learn in school, because it's the way you, I guess, put ideas together and the way you compile everything that you know into who you are and the way you look at the world. So sorry to get all woo-woo on you, but that's the way it is. So Jim, let me kind of dive into this a little bit because you talked about a couple of things in our last episode where you talked about you had lived in rural and now you're really happy that you're living in Atlanta and in a little more of a energetic environment and things like that. First off, tell me, who are you really wanting to impact with your business?
I mean, I really think I want to help small and medium-sized businesses. I mean, I'm not necessarily looking to go work with like some huge, global conglomerate because, and even in a sense, as much as I've gone back and forth with this and sometimes like when I lived in North Carolina, major hurricane not only wiped out my house, wiped out businesses I was working with. So you have to be careful, I guess you could say, about being hyper local because that's not always a good thing. But I also feel like what I've seen lately is it's kind of this, if you want to call it full circle, is like there's still a need for, if you want to call it local marketing, right? There's not always people getting their word out because they either can't afford it from the perspective of, I can't hire this marketing person at X dollars per month, but they also don't have anything out there that shows how they are, solving problems, right? They're not doing any sort of content, right? They're not doing video content. They're not doing written content. What they're tending to do, which is, can be a good thing or bad thing, is they're going to networking meetings. And they go and give their, 30 to 60 second elevator pitch, hope that somebody's going to connect with them, hope that they're going to get remembered after that meeting, and that somehow they're going to get referral business. And that works sometimes, but I think over time, and I definitely saw this over the last, 3-4 years, I was doing that. And I was like, you know what? I've got to broaden my horizons because you might be playing, as we say sometimes, in the wrong sandbox, you're in the wrong swimming pool, and you've got to, be prepared to make that, as I like to say, that adaptation. I like to say shift as opposed to pivot. right? But you got to be able to shift your mindset. You've got to be able to shift of, take a look at, okay, I go to these meetings every week at the same time in the same place. How much business has that actually brought you? Because I think sometimes people confuse activity with actually, making progress, right? Like, oh, well, I was really busy. I went to all these meetings. Okay, but what do you have to show for it?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that I've seen. And so even when I do go to some of these meetings, I'll ask questions like, well, do you have any videos about what you do? And you sometimes get like that, the dog with looking to the side look like, what? It's like, well, where do I go to find out more about what your business does? And going to a static website isn't always going to do it.
Nope.
And I'm going to make a quick plug because I know you showed this to me recently, but even the company you're working with, right, with this relatable product, that to me even has my brain spinning as like, wow, here's a different way to connect with people. It's interactive, even though it's truly asynchronous at the time, because I have to watch the video, answer the questions, but it's a different way of looking at things. And so I don't need to spend, hundreds or thousands of dollars to be with some sort of membership to hope that somebody's going to do business with me. And so I think that's part of the challenge. I think another piece of that challenge is, if you're not like, say, like us, where you create content, well, how are you getting the word out about your business, right? When we look at, we'll call it traditional media, the television stations we grew up with, the newspapers, the magazines, they're all going in the wrong direction, because now not only are people streaming, but even if they're streaming, and my wife loves to do this, we record it so we can fast forward through the commercials, or we pay so we don't have to watch the commercials. So you're not necessarily going to reach these people with your solution that way. So I think that challenge is, how do I get out there? How do I make sure that I'm doing that? And I think the other piece is, it's not always about creating content. Sometimes it's about engaging with other people, right? And then they'll start to realize, like, MK doesn't post a lot of stuff, but she definitely helped me think about something because of a comment she made. And so I think you've got kind of this, I've seen it kind of go both ways. You got these people like, you got to put video out all the time. And then you got these other people like, less is more. Yeah. And I think I'm going to say, I don't think there's a right answer. I'm going to go back to the classic, it depends.
That's right.
I actually recently talked with someone that said they're actually posting on Facebook multiple times a day, as opposed to, because back, it used to be don't post more than once a day. But when you think about, if you want to call it the algorithms,
yes,
even if you post 5 times on Facebook today, MK, I may not see one of your posts. So that previous fear of like, oh, if you post too much, people are going to get tired of you, it's not happening anymore.
No.
So I think that's something that we have to think about. What's our strategy? And so sometimes, right, rather than posting 5 times, we'll go out there, make a list. My friend Judy Fox talks about this. Make a list of those 10 to 20 people that you really want to get to know on LinkedIn and engage with them. Doesn't mean you have to go send them a connection request and, spam them in their inbox about like, hey, I'd like to connect with you. Just start to build, that awareness of them, and vice versa. And they might say, you know what, this person's been making comments and other stuff, but they're not asking me for anything.
Right.
And I think that's part of the thing, we have to think about from a strategy standpoint, is like, it's not always about like, oh, I gotta get on MK's calendar and I gotta close this deal. I get it. There's still some people, that's their mindset. But I think sometimes, it's, it's just, like the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise is ultimately going to win because they're being slow, methodical, and they've planned things out, and they're not rushing because they think, oh, I got to be first. Because our voices aren't for everyone, right? That's the other thing, right? Not everybody is your potential client. It's certain people. And so to your question, right, I'm looking for small and medium-sized businesses. Sure, I'd like to, maybe work with the Atlanta Braves or stuff like that, but that becomes a whole completely different thing. Mm-hmm. And then that might change what I can or can't do with other people. So I think those are those things you have to think about, the consequences of certain actions.
Completely. That innovation to me is exactly that. You have people you want to impact, but there are also those people or those organizations that you just love and follow and align with, and you are just gaga every time you see them. Like if you want to work with a particular sports team, that's part of you innovating. You can take your message, your marketing the Marines way, or the way the Marines do, and you've got that statement that you use. And you can take that into everything you do and bring that not just methodical, but okay, you're going to have a plan, but when the crap hits the fan, you're going to have to take parts of that plan and discard it and invent new parts in order to figure out what to do next. That you look at marketing differently because of that. You don't put a plan out and say, this is the way we're going to do this campaign, and then just do it till you beat it like a dead horse. You're going to look at that and go, okay, yeah, all right, this isn't quite working. That isn't quite working. We need to do this. I love your analogy. Yes. People, SEO, I'm not going to say SEO is dead. I'm not going to say it's alive. I'm going to say it is in a slow decline because people don't, going back to this new generation, I call them, and I didn't come up with this term, but the category pirates from the book Play Bigger, they came up with this, native digitals. They're a different form of human than you and I. You and I are native analogs, right? We grew up in a world without the internet and without cell phones. We had to actually do things in person. Or over the phone with one phone line. And it was difficult to get a conference call, right? But this generation, these coming up, they don't. It's a completely different world for them. So they are native digitals. Software is ubiquitous. Software is like, yeah, whatever. It is life. It's part of life. And websites are static things that they just look at to see if this is a company they want to do business with. Just one of the things they look at.
Right.
Not the thing, one of the things. And this generation doesn't go to Google and search something. They go to TikTok and search. They go to Instagram and search a hashtag. They don't go to LinkedIn. Sorry, they just don't, unless they're actually in business, have been taught to, right? But they go to YouTube. They use YouTube as a search engine, not Google. So we have to adapt that. If you don't use video, to your point, and with exactly what you do, if you don't use video, if a company listening to my voice does not use video in their content strategy, in their representation of themselves on their website, in their going to and creating a YouTube channel talking about themselves and their product, and we're not talking about just selling, we're talking about a framework of what they do and the purpose behind what they do. That's where video is powerful, because this generation is going to go to that and go, do I align with you? And do you represent what I think is important in life? Or are you just trying to sell me stuff?
Right.
And they don't want that I'm just trying to sell you stuff. They're going to reject that all the way to the bank with another company. They're going to go to another company and reject you completely if that's all you're trying to do is sell. So when you innovate, and the things that you're doing with innovation fit perfectly, you and I both, we are native analogs. We are from a different world than these youngsters, these native digitals. We grew up in a completely different time and we look at things differently. But we have been able to adapt because of our innovation, because of our previous experience, because of your military background and the way you want to solve problems. And you look at new things to be able to solve that problem. Give me an example of a new thing when you're looking at marketing and you're potentially trying to help someone with video, or trying to help someone with remote production or anything. And how do you look at that differently and be able to adapt what you do to accommodate the changes in the technology, the environment, the company, whatever? Just give me an example of when you've had to adapt that.
Well, I think, like we talked earlier, as an example, Shure just came out with a brand new microphone set that really simplifies things, because now I can just take my phone and these wireless lapel mics and I can just go out and I can record content, and then I can download it, repurpose it, upload it to whatever platform. Where before it was like, oh, well, I've got to get this and I've got to get that. And oh, I've got to have all these things attached to my phone. And I think sometimes we get into what we like to call sometimes I guess you could say in the video industry is GAS, right? Gear Acquisition Syndrome. And it keeps people from taking action because, oh, well, I've got to get the $10,000 camera and I've got to get this and I've got to get that. Well, the phones and the smartphones of today, those cameras are incredible and amazing and will do what you need to get done. You don't need to, go and do all this extra investment, because what will happen is, let's say you spent $5,000 on gear. 3 months later, you haven't seen a return on your investment. You're going to get really frustrated. So it's like, start with what you have. I think that's been one of the things that I've seen. And then with a lot of these new AI tools, like a company like 11 Labs, you can literally put the text in there and it will create a voice recording for you. And you can pick the type of voice you want. So now you can take that audio, put it into something like Canva or Adobe, and create a video that's basically nothing more than photos of the company that you turn into a video. So that's a way to simplify things, instead of saying, oh, well, I've got to go hire a videographer that's going to charge me $10,000 to do this for me. Yeah. And so if you can do that and you start to see things become effective, now the team, right, the people you're working with start to say, oh, well, I can take a picture with my phone that we can do editing with and everything else. And so I think that's where I see, and it maybe seems odd, but it's like we can innovate by being simpler. What I love about, like I was telling you, is, well, now I don't have to be like I am right now at my desk to produce content, right? I want to get out. I want to be in different places, right? I could be at a place out in somewhere in Atlanta and just start recording and just like, hey, I'm out at this place and this is what we're seeing. Let's go talk to the manager, right? And you give them a microphone and you start talking to them. It's like, I'm going to turn this into content on whatever platform. And they're just going to be like, wow, right? It was like, I didn't have to, go crazy and have all this, high-end lighting and, makeup and everything else. Because I think this younger generation, to your point, they want to just see the real you. They want things to be simple, so there's no reason to feel like it doesn't always have to be, this high-end, graphically overlaid stuff. Sometimes, just keep it simple, right? The KISS method. And that is what will actually be just as effective as if you could go the other route.
Amen. Amen. That's what innovation means. And you're right in the gas, right? Gadgets. I'm not just, I love gadgets. Yes. I'm completely recovering from that, trying to every day. If I were left to my own devices, I would have all kinds of little gadgets that were just so cool and you could do such cool things, but were in no way valuable to me in my daily life. It's just because I've got it and it's amazing and it's so cool. And isn't it really? Yeah. But I'm more so that way with software. I am so much more so that way with software. If you have not heard of this yet, try Pi.ai. Oh. Don't attach it to your phone unless you want someone listening to you constantly, because that's what Pi will do. But Pi.ai is an incredible technology that is actually emotive. It will actually be, it doesn't have an emotional intelligence, but it has definitely been taught so that when you say something like, oh, my dog's in the vet, it got hit by a car and I don't know whether it's going to live, what should I do? If you said that to Pi, you would get a response as if you were talking to a human. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That sounds terrible. I hope you can cope with that. Maybe call the vet and see how they're doing. Or can you, be by your dog and pet him to make sure that he knows you're there. And you'll get that kind of response from an AI, which is like very scary to me. Right. So those kinds of technologies, I love looking at them and I love experimenting with them and I love checking them out. But I think that proclivity, that desire to learn, that curiosity is what helps you and I innovate the spaces we're in. The balance is, and we talked about this last time, there is no balance in life between work life and home life. It's a choice every minute of every day, especially as entrepreneurs who are digital, who live on the internet. We don't have an office that we go out to like we used to in the old days. It's a choice every day. I can choose to eat dinner with my husband and then leave him instead of watching TV with him, or watching a show with him, or going to the movies or whatever. I can choose to leave him and go work in my office or work on my computer, or pretend that I'm kind of with him but bring my computer along and I'm really not. Right? That's a choice. That's not a balance. And it's the same thing with the software in our innovation. We have to choose. There's the balance. There's the tipping point. Am I going to spend all my time investigating all these new things because I'm curious all the time? That's not going to get me anywhere with my business, like you talked about. I'm not. How am I going to apply that? What actions am I going to take with it? Is it just for the sake of experimenting and being curious? Well, if that's the case, I hope I have a very good nest egg set aside so that I can just go every day playing with new technologies, and I don't have to worry about making money at it. But most of us, that's not the case. Most of us, we have to figure something out. That's the difference between as my husband, there were many of my ventures that he claimed were hobbies, because they of course made no money, and I was just having a blast. And a few of them that actually turned into pretty good businesses. And that balance of that curiosity mixed with action, it is really what you have to find, what each of us has to find, depending on where we are in life. So where are you with that? Because you check things out, you try new technologies, you want to help people understand how to use these new things. How do you balance those and still innovate your space, but yet keep your curiosity and satisfy it?
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge, because sometimes, right, it's like that old saying that, the cobbler doesn't have any shoes, right? It's like you start helping other people and like, well, I haven't done anything for myself to let people know what I do. And so even like now that I'm working, I'm on the board of the Georgia Veterans Network. It's like, okay, so the challenge is like, how do we get the message out to these veterans in Northwest Georgia that what we're doing, right? And some of that is like, hey, we need to create a podcast, or we need to go on LinkedIn audio. We need to create educational videos, because there's things happening. And the challenge in the veteran space is, we have veterans from, there's still a few left from World War II and Korea and Vietnam. But then we've got these young veterans, to your point, that are part of that, digital group, where these older folks, like, they don't want to touch a smartphone. And it's like, but the government is doing things that's going to require them to at least, have access to the technology to let them do things like make appointments and other things. So it's like, how do you balance that? Because I think sometimes, MK, we might be a little different in that we like technology, but we probably have a lot of our peers that don't want to have anything to do with it. They're not on social media. They don't want to spend time on it. And so that's where you have to figure out, like, okay, well, sometimes we have to create, I guess we'll call it a multimodal message. We still have to create, flyers and other things that, personally, I'm not a fan of, but I also have to understand that to reach a part of that audience, we still have to kind of do things the old way. And so I think that's been a part of the challenge as well. But then I have a friend that I'm working with in the local space. They know about geofencing, which is like, that's completely fascinating to me, that, I can target you because you showed up at this place, even though that place is my competitor. And you're just like, it's kind of mind blowing that, and probably, I would be safe to say that 80% of the people, and that might even be a low number, don't know about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they're wondering, like, well, how did I, it's kind of like when we go on those social networks, all of a sudden we start seeing ads from some of these companies because we looked at something earlier. Those are the sort of things that we're challenged with. And I think we're gonna continue to see that change as things evolve, as new technology comes out. I mean, now we've got not that everybody's running out and buying one because of the price tag, right? Like you've got the Apple Vision Pro, which I think is fascinating. I'm just not really ready to spend $3,000 to $4,000 on something that sounds like it's still got some room to grow before it's ready for mass adoption. But the whole idea of, like, I guess thinking of some of those science fiction movies where you're moving things around with your hands and it's all virtual, I think that sounds pretty cool myself. But and there's a lot of people like, I don't have anything to do with that. I want it on a piece of paper. I want to be able to write on it. So I think that's part of the challenge as well.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.